Hi guys, welcome to Memo's Tutorials. Today we are looking at the nitrogen cycle. First of all, you need to know the occurrence of nitrogen. We can find it in the atmosphere as nitrogen gas. We can find it in the soil as ammonia, as nitrites or nitrates. We can also find it in plants as proteins, as amino acids. We can also find it in animals as proteins as well as amino acids, as urea, and as the nucleic acids. Okay, so you need to know that the nucleic acids are the ones that carries the genetic information of a particular organism or part of a plant, which includes DNA and RNA. They are all protein in nature as well. Okay, so they contain this nitrogen. They contain nitrogen. So now looking at the nitrogen cycle, we need to see how the nitrogen moves from the atmosphere into the plants, animals, the soil, and also go back into the atmosphere. So firstly, we have what we call nitrogen fixation. On nitrogen fixation, we are having nitrogen gas from the atmosphere being converted into absorbable nitrogen compounds. And this occurs through the help of the nitrogen fixing bacteria. We have nitrogen fixing bacteria which converts nitrogen in the atmosphere into nitrogen in the soil. Okay, so all nitrogen fixing bacteria, they contain an enzyme that we call the nitrogenase, and they are mostly concentrated in leguminous plants, which includes beans, peas, groundnuts, and clover. That's why these plants that I've mentioned here are a very good source of proteins. Okay, um, they have nitrogen fixing bacteria which are able to convert nitrogen in the atmosphere into nitrogen in the soil, right? In plants. Okay, these nitrogen fixing bacteria, they have an enzyme that we call nitrogenase enzyme. What an enzyme does, it catalyzes the reaction between nitrogen gas and hydrogen to form ammonia. So once hydrogen and nitrogen react together, and form ammonia. This ammonia would then be converted into nitrates. Nitrates would later on be converted into nitrates. So the process of changing ammonia into nitrites and nitrates is called nitrification, right? So here we are saying the ammonia that was produced in nitrogen fixation, we are oxidizing it now. We'll first oxidize it to a nitrite, which is NO2 minus, and then we further oxidize it again to get NO3 minus, which is a nitrate. Okay, and this is done by nitrifying bacteria. It is done with the help of nitrifying bacteria. Okay, so that's nitrogen in the soil. It starts as ammonia, nitrites, then nitrates. Okay, so we have also what we call decomposition, where we are saying that complex organic molecules are being broken down into simple inorganic molecules, and this is done through the action of microorganisms, and these we call them decomposers, right? These microorganisms, we call them decomposers, and they include bacteria and fungi. So the decomposition of nitrogen containing organic compound is called, it's also called ammonification. So when you come across the word ammonification, just know that it is the decomposition of organic compounds that contain nitrogen. Okay, so what we get at the end of decomposition is ammonia or ammonium ions. The ammonium or ammonia that is produced during decomposition, it is going to be left in the soil, or it's absorbed into the soil, right? Let's say your plants have died, your animal have died, all the ammonia that is produced and all the ammonium ions are going to go straight into the soil, right? And when they get into the soil, the ammonia, remember, it undergoes nitrification. It's oxidized to nitrites, and nitrites are further oxidized to nitrates, right? And then we move on to what we call denitrification. Denitrification, we are saying, this is the process by which nitrate is converted back to nitrogen gas, and this is done through the help of denitrifying bacteria. Okay, we are now converting the nitrates into nitrogen gas. Nitrogen gas is going back into the atmosphere, and this usually occurs in waterlogged soils where there is not enough oxygen, right? So the waterlogged soils, it makes the soil less fertile, as most of the nitrogen will be taken away from the soil, going back to the atmosphere. Remember, nitrogen makes up amino acids, which make up proteins, which are very important for growth. So if your soil now, it's waterlogged, it means that it has less oxygen, and most of the nitrogen is being lost into the atmosphere. So as nitrogen goes into the atmosphere, your land is left less fertile. It's not fertile anymore because of lack of nitrogen. So now the question is, remember, how do plants get to have nitrogen and how do animals get to have nitrogen? So when a nitrification has taken place, now we've got nitrates. Your plant can absorb these nitrates into its system. When it absorbs the nitrates, it is going to then make up the amino acids, and with those nitrates, it can also, with amino acids, can form proteins. That's how plants end up having proteins. And the ones with the higher content of proteins is beans, peas, groundnuts, and clover, because they are the ones that have got the nitrogen fixing bacteria. um, so now, when we eat beans, we are taking the proteins that are inside the beans, and those proteins, we are going to digest them back to amino acids. Remember, when digestion takes place, we are the protein that we ate is going to be digested, and when absorption takes place, we'll be absorbing the end product of proteins, which is the amino acids. And excess amino acids in your system, you are going to excrete them in the form of urea, right? And we've got other processes that have an effect on the nitrogen cycle. For example, we've got lightning. Lightning carries out nitrogen fixation by causing nitrogen to react with oxygen to form nitrogen oxides. And these nitrogen oxides, they dissolve in rainwater to form nitric acid, which has nitrate that the plants are also able to absorb. This occurs through the help of lightning. Okay, we have the Harper process. I'm sure you have covered it in combined science. This one, we have artificial process whereby our nitrogen and hydrogen are allowed to react together, giving us ammonia. So this reduces the amount of nitrogen gas in the atmosphere. And then we also have the application of nitrogen containing fertilizers, which increases the amount of nitrogen containing compounds in the soil, okay, and making the ground more fertile, making your land more fertile. When you have a more fertile land, it means that you are going to have the yields that you're going to get more yields. You are going to get a lot of your maize, a lot of your sorghum, depending with what you have planted.